The night was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic on the highway. A dimly lit gas station stood alone on the roadside, its neon sign flickering slightly. Inside the small convenience store, the cashier, a lanky kid no older than 20, leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Outside, the pumps sat mostly empty, save for a single black pickup truck parked at one of them. Dwayne, "The Rock" Johnson, stepped out, stretching his shoulders before grabbing the pump handle. He had been driving for hours, enjoying the solitude of an open road, away from flashing cameras and crowded sets. Just a man, a truck, and miles of asphalt. As he filled up, a low rumble cut through the night air, the kind that sent vibrations through the pavement. Motorcycles. A group of them, at least 6, rolled into the station, engines growling like thunder. They weren't speeding, but they weren't moving casually either. Their jackets bore a symbol on the back, something tough and unmistakable. These weren't just weekend riders out for a cruise. The Rock barely glanced up, but he noticed everything. The way they parked their bikes in a loose circle, the way their eyes locked onto him as they dismounted. The cashier inside stiffened, lowering his phone. Even the flickering neon lights seemed to buzz louder, sensing the shift in the air. One of the bikers, tall and broad with a patchy beard, stepped forward. He smirked as he got closer, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Well, well, look who it is," he said, his voice carrying over the quiet night. The others spread out slightly, arms crossed, watching. The Rock didn't flinch. He finished filling his tank, placed the nozzle back in the holder, and turned, his expression calm, unreadable. He had been in enough situations in his life to know how to read a room, or, in this case, a gas station parking lot. The bearded man tilted his head, sizing him up. "Ain't every day we run into a Hollywood tough guy out here." Silence stretched between them. The air was thick with unspoken words, a moment hanging on the edge of something bigger. Then, with a slow, measured smile, the Rock finally spoke. "Can I help you boys with something?" The bearded biker chuckled, shaking his head as he took another step closer. The others stood behind him, their body language unreadable, but their presence alone made it clear. This wasn't just a casual encounter. One of them, a younger guy with tattoos running down his arms, leaned against his bike, smirking. "Man, you're even bigger in real life." The Rock let out a small exhale through his nose, his gaze steady. "Appreciate that," he said simply, his voice even. The leader, still smirking, crossed his arms. "You know, we've had plenty of Hollywood types come through these parts. Most of them ain't half as tough as they act on screen." The Rock remained still, his expression unreadable. He knew what this was. He'd seen it before. They were testing him, trying to feel out whether he was just another famous name who played the tough guy, or if there was something real beneath the image. "Sounds about right," he finally said, his voice calm. "Some guys pretend, some guys don't." The bearded man narrowed his eyes slightly. He wasn't expecting that answer. A tense pause settled over the parking lot. Even the gas station cashier inside had stopped pretending to work, peeking through the window, his face partially hidden behind the register. The younger biker chuckled, rubbing his jaw. "So, which one are you?" The Rock tilted his head slightly, his shoulders relaxed. "Guess that depends on what you're looking for." The leader smiled, but there was something behind it, something calculating. "You think you could take all of us if things got rough?" At this, the Rock let out a low chuckle, not forced, not exaggerated, just a simple, amused reaction. Then he shook his head. "That's not my style." The group chuckled among themselves, exchanging looks, thinking he was backing down, but then he added, "But if you're looking for a fight, I can promise you one thing." The smirks faded just slightly. "You won't be happy with how it ends." For a split second, the air seemed to thicken. Then, the bearded biker did something unexpected. He threw his head back and laughed. A deep, genuine laugh that echoed through the lot. "Well, hell," he said, wiping at his beard. "Maybe you are the real deal." The laughter rolled through the parking lot, breaking the tension like a crack in the pavement. The other bikers exchanged glances, their smirks turning into something else. Curiosity, maybe even respect. The bearded man shook his head, still grinning. Most guys would have started making excuses or tried to act all tough. He exhaled sharply. But you just stood there. The Rock shrugged, his expression still unreadable. No need to act. The younger biker, the one with the tattoos, stepped forward now, a little less cocky than before. You know, I grew up watching you wrestle, he admitted. Thought all that stuff was fake? The Rock gave him a look, not the part where you hit the ground. A few of the bikers chuckled at that, nodding knowingly. The energy had shifted now. Not entirely relaxed, but no longer hostile. It was as if they had come expecting something only to realize the man standing in front of them wasn't what they had assumed. The leader smirked, glancing down at his hands before looking back up. "Tell you what," he said, cracking his knuckles. "How about a little test?" The Rock raised an eyebrow. "No fights," the man clarified. "Just a good old strength match." The younger guy grinned. "Arm wrestling. You against our guy." The Rock looked at the group, then back at the leader. "That your way of saying, you just want a picture?" Laughter erupted. Genuine this time. The bearded biker shook his head, pointing at him. All right, I like you." One of the bikers moved to his motorcycle and grabbed a rag, wiping down the seat before setting his arm on it. He was built like a brick wall, thick arms covered in faded ink. "You in?" The Rock let the moment hang for a second, then finally nodded. "All right," he said, rolling up his sleeve. "Let's see what you got." The bikers crowded in, forming a loose circle around them. The cashier inside was pressed against the window now, watching with wide eyes. As the Rock locked hands with the biker, gripping tight, the leader grinned. "Win or lose," he said, "I think we just figured out one thing." The Rock glanced at him. "You ain't just another Hollywood guy." The air felt different now. Not tense, not aggressive, but charged with something else. Excitement, amusement, a challenge that had nothing to do with fists or intimidation. The Rock rolled his shoulders, flexed his fingers once, then locked hands with the biker. The guy was strong. That much was obvious from the way his forearm tensed, veins pushing against the ink on his skin. He grinned, showing slightly yellowed teeth, and squeezed just a little harder. The Rock smirked. He'd been here before. The leader of the group clapped his hands together. "All right, boys, no cheap shots, on my count." The circle tightened around them, the smell of motor oil and gasoline thick in the night air. 3, 2, 1. The biker lunged first, trying to catch the Rock off guard with sheer force. His bicep flexed hard, pushing with everything he had. The Rock didn't budge. The guy's smirk twitched, turning into something more serious. His grip tightened, muscles straining as he dug his heels in. Still, nothing. A couple of the bikers exchanged glances, murmuring to each other. The younger one, who had been watching wrestling all his life, whistled low under his breath. "Damn, man," the biker grunted, shifting his weight, his jaw tightening as he tried to gain an inch. A single inch. The Rock gave him a moment. Let him struggle. Let him think maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. And then, in one smooth motion, he pushed. The biker's arm collapsed instantly, his knuckles smacking against the seat of the motorcycle with a dull thud. The moment it happened, the circle of men exploded into laughter, claps, and cheers. "Holy damn, brother, you didn't even move," the Rock chuckled, rolling his shoulder as he let go. The biker shook out his arm, blinking at it like it had betrayed him. "Well," he muttered, rubbing his wrist. "That answers that." The leader grinned, clapping the biker on the back. "Ain't no shame in losing to the Rock, man." The younger biker shook his head in disbelief. "Dude, you could have snapped his arm clean off if you wanted." The Rock smiled. "Yeah." Then, after a beat, he added, "But I didn't." And that, somehow, was what made them respect him even more. One of the bikers, a man with a scruffy beard and deep lines around his eyes, spoke up. "You know, man, we weren't trying to start anything." The Rock shrugged. "I know." The leader crossed his arms, eyeing him thoughtfully. "Truth is, we don't see a lot of guys like you out here. Most famous types don't stop at places like this unless they have to. The Rock smirked. Guess I just like a good road trip. The younger biker nodded. Yeah, but you could have just ignored us. Could have played it safe, walked away. The Rock tilted his head slightly. Why would I do that? The leader studied him for a moment, then exhaled through his nose. Most guys in your position wouldn't have given us the time of day. There was something unspoken in his words. Something deeper than just this moment. The Rock glanced around at the group, taking them in. Not as a gang, not as troublemakers, but as men. Some older, some younger. All carrying different histories, different struggles. He had grown up around men like this. Men who had something to prove. Not because they wanted to fight, but because life had made them fight. I don't forget where I came from, he said finally. The leader's smirk softened. He nodded once. That's rare. The younger biker, still rubbing his wrist, grinned. Yeah, and I bet my damn arm won't forget it either. Laughter broke through the group, real and unforced. The energy had changed completely now. The cashier inside, still watching through the window, slowly shook his head. Whatever he thought was going to happen tonight, this wasn't it. And somehow, that made it even better. The Rock leaned against his truck, crossing his arms as the bikers settled into a more relaxed stance around him. The night was still, the only sounds coming from the occasional passing car and the distant hum of the gas station lights. The tension that had once filled the air had been replaced with something different. Understanding. The leader of the group pulled a pack of cigarettes from his vest pocket, tapping one out before offering it. The Rock shook his head. Nah, man, never picked up the habit. The biker smirked. Figures. Not a lot of guys built like you sucking down smoke. One of the younger bikers, still rubbing his sore wrist from the arm wrestling match, hesitated for a second before speaking. You ever get tired of all of it? The Rock glanced at him. All of what? The guy shrugged. The fame, the cameras, the pressure. For the first time that night, The Rock didn't answer right away. He exhaled through his nose, looking out at the open road before them. Some days, he admitted. Some days, it's a lot. But I remember where I started. That keeps me grounded. The leader nodded. Started from nothing? The Rock smirked. Less than nothing. A few of the bikers exchanged glances. They had heard the stories, of course. How he had been broke at one point. How he had barely scraped by before making it big. But hearing it now, in this setting, it felt different. The younger biker frowned, looking down at his boots. Yeah, well, some of us are still trying to start. The Rock studied him for a beat. The guy was young, maybe mid-20s, with that restless energy that came from trying to figure out where you belonged. You thinking about quitting? The Rock asked. The younger man let out a short laugh. Some days. The Rock nodded. Then don't. The group fell silent. The younger biker looked up. It's not that easy. No, The Rock said, but neither is starting over. The leader flicked his cigarette away, watching The Rock carefully. You sound like a guy who's been there. The Rock met his gaze. I am. And in that moment, they all understood something. This wasn't just talk. This was someone who had walked through fire and made it to the other side. The younger biker kicked at the gravel with the toe of his boot, letting The Rock's words settle in. The others were quiet too, some nodding slightly, some just staring at the ground like they were thinking about things they hadn't let themselves think about in a long time. The leader ran a hand over his beard, his expression unreadable. Then, after a moment, he let out a dry chuckle. Damn, man, didn't expect a therapy session at a gas station. The Rock grinned. Life's funny like that. One of the older bikers, a guy with silver streaks in his hair and deep lines on his face, finally spoke up. We've all been there, you know, trying to figure it out. Sometimes you just need someone to remind you to keep going. The younger guy, still standing near his bike, nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess. He scratched at the back of his neck, glancing up. So, what did you do? When you thought about giving up? The Rock crossed his arms, thinking. I remembered who I was before life knocked me down, and I made a choice to get back up. The leader smirked. Sounds simple when you say it. The Rock shrugged. "It is. Simple, but not easy." The younger biker exhaled, nodding again, this time more sure of himself. The group stood there for a while, no one in a rush to break the moment. It wasn't often that guys like them, tough on the outside, carrying battles no one saw, had a conversation like this. The Rock reached into his truck, grabbing a water bottle, twisting the cap off. As he took a sip, the leader chuckled. "You know, we came in here thinking we'd push your buttons a little." The Rock smirked. "And?" The leader shook his head, smiling. "Turns out you might be one of the realest guys we've ever met." The younger biker crossed his arms, tilting his head. "So, you ever ride?" The Rock let out a low chuckle. "I've been on a few." The leader nodded toward an empty bike. "You ever want to take a real ride? You got a crew." The Rock grinned. "I'll keep that in mind." The cashier inside, still watching through the glass, shook his head in disbelief. Whatever had just happened here, it wasn't what anyone expected, and somehow, that made it even better. The Rock glanced around at the group, their postures more relaxed now, their faces carrying something different than when they first rolled in. Whatever tension had been there at the beginning was long gone. In its place was something else, mutual respect. He twisted the cap back onto his water bottle and tossed it into the truck's cup holder. "Well, boys," he said, stretching his shoulders, "I should probably hit the road before you convince me to trade in my truck for a Harley." The leader chuckled. "Might not be a bad look for you." The younger biker, the one who had been quiet earlier, spoke up. "Hey man, appreciate what you said." The Rock met his eyes. "Don't let yourself forget it." The kid nodded, and something about the way he stood a little taller told the Rock that maybe, just maybe, he'd take those words with him past this parking lot. The leader held out a hand. The Rock shook it, firm and solid. "Take care of yourself," the biker said. "And if you ever need a crew, well, you know where to find us." The Rock smirked. "Appreciate that." He climbed into his truck, the door shutting with a heavy thud. As the engine roared to life, the bikers stepped back, watching as he pulled away. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the rumble of his truck fading into the distance. Then, the younger guy let out a breath and shook his head. "Man, that dude's the real deal." The leader nodded. "Yeah, and I think we just got schooled in what real strength looks like." The cashier inside finally exhaled, still gripping the counter where he'd been leaning. He had been expecting a fight, a headline-worthy brawl. Instead, he had just watched something completely different, something rare. Out on the road, the Rock rolled down his window, letting the night air rush in. He didn't need to look back to know that moment would stick with those guys. Maybe they wouldn't talk about it much. Maybe they'd just let it settle in their minds. But things like that mattered. Not because of what was said, but because of what was understood. He smiled to himself, gripping the wheel a little tighter. Some people fought to prove they were strong, but real strength was knowing when you didn't have to. This wasn't just about strength, it was about respect, about understanding, about knowing that true toughness isn't about fighting, it's about lifting others up. The Rock didn't just walk away from a fight, he walked away leaving something bigger behind. Next time you see someone struggling, remember, real strength is in how you use it. Because the toughest people aren't the ones who fight the hardest. They're the ones who know when they don't have to.